Spoilers for the show in 3, 2, 1. Coop is going to Colorado to find his family, so Season 3 will no doubt shed more light on the Centennial State. But what do we actually know about Colorado? The answer is not much. Canonically, anyway. After the Great War, Denver, the state's former capital, became known as Dogtown, named for the massive packs of wild dogs and cyberdogs that roamed the ruins. They were quick, dangerous, and hungry. Most people avoided the city entirely out of fear of being eaten, yet a small group of survivors made their home among the tallest buildings, taking advantage of the city's vertiginous layout. They crossed Denver via its many bridges, grew food on top of rooftops and balconies, carving out a precarious life above the dangerous streets below. Over time, these survivors learned to coexist with the wild dogs. Some cyberdogs like Rex can live for over 200 years, an almost godlike age that turned the creatures into living legends. Gradually, the survivors evolved into a tribe known as the Hangdogs, and they didn't just live alongside the creatures. Instead, they tamed them, and once that bond was forged, the city streets were much safer to explore. Life was bliss, until a certain group flying a red flag with a golden bull decided to pay the city a visit. Having lost the first battle of Hoover Dam, the Legion came to Colorado to replenish their numbers in preparation for a second assault against the NCR. All tribes they encountered were either assimilated or exterminated. When Caesar's Legion arrived in Denver, the Hangdogs resisted for a time. Eventually, they surrendered when Legate Linnaeus began burning their dogs alive. The tribe's elders couldn't bear the thought of their spirits burning in the afterlife, so they submitted to the Legion. After assimilation, Caesar made the men Houndmasters, using their skills to tame and train Legion mongrels, a new weapon to use against the NCR. By the time of New Vegas, most of Colorado belongs to the Legion, and I imagine that even after Caesar's death, the Legion would continue to function, mostly. Despite the Mojave Legion fighting amongst themselves in 2296, there is talk of Caesar having successors to replace him once he's gone. We haven't seen any of them yet, and they might not exist, but if they do, they're probably living at the Legion's capital in Flagstaff, Arizona. His descendants would no doubt be groomed to lead in some capacity, keeping the system running across the 4 conquered states, including Colorado. So Season 3 should have Coop engaging with the Legion on some level, and I hope we'll see their technology and civilization as well. 2296 is also the year Coop found his family's cryopods in the Enclave vault beneath the Lucky 38. They were, of course, empty, save for a single postcard suggesting his family relocated to Colorado, specifically the Rocky Mountains. Again, not much is known about Colorado, but we do know a bit about the mountains. In 2103, Paladin Layla Romani led the first expeditionary force across the country, from Lost Hills, California to Appalachia, West Virginia, with the goal of re-establishing contact with the Appalachian Brotherhood, investigating sites of technology across the ruins of America, and reinforcing the Brotherhood's presence on the East Coast. Other than the Rocky Mountains getting in the way of communication, not much happened. More can be said for the greatest mutant of all time, Marcus. After traveling with the Chosen One in Fallout 2, Marcus ventured into the Rockies in search of more first-generation super mutants, which he did find, and together they settled in the Mojave, first at Black Mountain and then Jacobstown. Now you might be wondering, why was there super mutants in the Rocky Mountains? And the best answer I can think of is once the Master was defeated in Fallout 1, the remnants of Unity fractured, and 2 notable forces were born, Attis's army from Brotherhood of Steel, and Gamoran's army from Fallout Tactics. The mutants seen in Fallout Tactics were ruthlessly pursued by Brotherhood airships, with the survivors fleeing into the mountains to survive, and I believe it was those mutants Marcus was trying to find, and I think the show is going to build on this. In Season 1, we saw a super mutant at the Enclave Research Colony, which we know is located in Colorado, or at least heavily alluded to. There are 2 possibilities for this mutant being here. Either the Enclave has discovered remnants of Gamoran's army that Marcus didn't find, or the Enclave have created mutants using the forced evolutionary virus, perhaps trying to create a new and improved Frank Horrigan, Hank Forrigan, Mark Corrigan? Anyway, in 2296, the colony received instructions from Steph Harper to begin Phase 2 of the experiment. We don't know what Phase 2 is meant to achieve, but it's implied that both FEV and the 3 vaults play a major part of it. So I guess we're going to have a new generation of mutants/super managers. But yeah, super mutants in Colorado and the Rocky Mountains isn't new, and Season 3 could make large parts of Fallout Tactics canon lore. Having mentioned the Enclave's new base, the research colony is all but stated to be within the Rocky Mountains. The base extends down across 8 levels, built around a long central atrium once used for loading and unloading freight trains. Staggered loading balconies and a cargo crane are still in place, though they've since been repurposed for research. Experiments conducted here include behavioral engineering, biological research, and energy production. We haven't had a full look around the base yet, and it may extend deeper into the mountain. It could even be the place the president retreated to shortly before the Great War started.
Now, Vault-Tec Vault living is living the dream. And it's the only way to safety, unless you are the president of the United States or something like that, and you have a mountain in Colorado to go under and direct the events of the world. Not many of us are that. There's only one of those. And his various and sundry advisors, I'm sure they'll be fine, but you won't. You won't be fine.
Not yet sure if the president is still alive, but the base appears to be central to Phase 2 of the FEV experiment, as well as having a communications network linking several Vault-Tec assets across the West Coast, including the headquarters in Los Angeles, a management vault beneath Las Vegas, and Vault 33 in Santa Monica, allowing the Enclave to keep tabs on how their experiments are progressing and what actions to take based on the updates received from agents. And it's this monitoring of Vault-Tec locations, including vaults, that has led me to believe this base is known by another name, a name I briefly mentioned a few years ago at the end of the Enclave video. Enclave Vault Research Control. It's a niche name, mentioned a single time in Fallout 2, and I'll explain a bit more about what it is in just a moment, because there's still some things for us to go through that's considered semi-canon. The show itself hasn't just confirmed the Enclave are still out there, it has also alluded to the existence of 2 vaults in Colorado, Vault 0 from Fallout Tactics, and Vault 29 from the cancelled Fallout 3 Van Buren. There's also a 3rd planned vault in Grand Junction that could turn out to be important, but we don't know anything about that location yet. Almost everything we know about these 2 vaults is currently non-canon, except for the fact they exist, so keep that in mind as I tell you more about these vaults. Vault 0 was constructed by expanding and reinforcing the Cheyenne Mountain complex, and was by far the largest vault created by Vault-Tec. The structure was designed to be the heart of the entire vault network, housing the geniuses of the pre-war world. Some people were kept in cryogenic stasis, while others had their brains extracted and stored in tanks of biomed gel. The ones who were extracted were connected to a central supercomputer known as the Calculator. The computer was meant to work in collaboration with the preserved pre-war minds to design and nurture the ideal post-war society. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Due to budget cuts, several critical backup systems were never included. Over time, many of the connected brains were damaged from age, wear and tear, faulty parts, and so on, leading to the Calculator becoming confused. When the Vault was attacked by Gamoran's army, remnants of the Master's army, the Calculator initiated the pacification protocol. A nuclear facility in Buena Vista came to life, powering robots far and wide, and began exterminating all life on the surface. Remember, this is non-canon. While the locations are referenced in the show, their purpose and history may end up being vastly different to what we see in the game. On the other hand, Vault 29 didn't even get a game. Van Buren was cancelled, but we do have design documents and the Fallout Bible to draw from. The vault was to be populated entirely by children, 15 and under. Most parents were either redirected to other vaults, or allowed entry due to ill health or terminal conditions that killed them off shortly after access. So essentially, Vault 29 had no adults and no human overseer either. Instead, it was run by a Zax supercomputer. The plan was to raise the children with robotic caretakers, educate them within a deliberately primitive culture, and release them into a controlled environment once they reached maturity, allowing them to rebuild society from the ground up. At one point, Derek Greenway, the author of the experiment, discussed his plans with a scientist named Diana Stone. Although she saw some scientific merit, she considered the project morally unacceptable and urged it to be scrapped. When Greenway refused, Diana secretly inserted herself into the project. When the Great War started, Diana was already connected to another Zax unit as part of a separate experiment, and using that system, she transmitted security codes that allowed her to seize control of Vault 29. Over time, she managed the upbringing of the children herself. Each year, she sent maintenance robots outside under the pretext of monitoring outside conditions. In reality, she was preparing the nearby village of Twin Mothers to receive the Vault's population. When the doors finally opened, the inhabitants found a ready-made settlement waiting for them. Everything was in place, and Diana was ready to play God, using holograms projected by the machines. Although some children who had grown up, like the Harold, would leave the village to create their own fortune. Thanks to maps, both Vault 29 and Twin Mothers are now canon locations. What isn't canon is the purpose of these locations, and there's a lot of stuff in Van Buren that might appear in the show as well. There's the Ciphers, descendants of pre-war scientists living in the Mesa Verde National Park. There's also the Iron Rivers tribe, whose ancestors followed the path of the Great Machine, a pre-war train, to Circle Junction. Not to mention the possibility of the Maxon Bunker in southern Colorado, and the Circle of Steel, who once called the bunker home. The Ciphers were mentioned by Father Elijah from New Vegas, so they are technically canon, as is the Circle of Steel, only instead of a mere mention, we actually meet one of their members, Christine Royce. With the show, we might get a bit more information about these factions, that is if they weren't assimilated or destroyed by the Legion. Another notable location in Colorado is Boulder Dome, a massive scientific research facility looming over the ruins of Boulder. The dome was built to withstand a direct nuclear strike. Surrounding it are the blasted remains of the city, now dangerously contaminated with radiation and toxic waste. Inside the dome, a desperate team of scientists are struggling to survive after being infected by a mysterious illness known as the New Plague. As they fight the disease, they are also trying to prevent their Zax unit from cannibalizing its own memory, which contains critical research on the plague. If too much data is lost, the system could fail entirely, and a cure might never be discovered. As you can see, there's so much lore that was never used, although some of it was repurposed, like Boulder Dome becoming Big Mountain. And I feel that isn't the only instance of information not being used for its original purpose. Which brings me back to the Enclave Vault Research Control, which I believe is the Mountain Research Colony, and this entire claim of mine stems from Vault Zero. Not the Vault Zero seen in Fallout Tactics with the calculator, but the original Vault Zero, created during a conversation between two developers. Supposedly, Leonard Boyarsky asked Tim Kaine how many digits a vault number could have. Kaine clarified that vaults could only be numbered from 0 to 999, which naturally led to the question, what about Vault Zero? Kaine suggested that maybe Vault Zero could be a control vault that monitored and coordinated all of the other vaults in America. The concept of monitoring the vaults evolved into the Enclave gathering data from all of the vault experiments, collating the information needed to build a generational starship and preserve humanity if Earth became uninhabitable. Elements of this concept made its way into Fallout 2, including a reference to the Enclave Vault Research Control Facility. In 2241, the facility was noted as still being active, though we have no idea where it is, but I feel as though this new Enclave base is it. A facility made to monitor the vaults, experiment, gather data, and shape the world, with the possibility of escaping into space if Earth cannot be saved. Long story short, anything could happen. There's so much lore that hasn't been confirmed yet, giving the writers plenty to draw from and build upon. I imagine we'll see more of the Legion, potentially remnants of the super mutants from Gamoran's army, the new Enclave, maybe even the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel, and possibly some hairy Deathclaws too. I'm guessing at least one of Coop's family will be found in Colorado, most likely Barbara. She'll tell Coop where to find Janie, setting up his quest for Season 4. But Janie really could be anywhere. Frozen, aged up inside a vault, living peacefully in a tribal-like village, working for the Enclave in payroll, or even living somewhere in space. Mad, I know. But what do you think? Will we see any of this in the show? And if so, how will this affect Coop's quest to find his family?